So the piece here, you will not finish today. You will most likely be working on it for a while. But if you choose to make it shorter, so for example, if I wanted to just end my piece right here, all I would need to do is just place it this, measure out the tail end here, and then cut off the paracord here. So if you decide that you get to this point and you're like, it's nice, it'll fit on my hand or my finger, this is how I hold keys, however you choose to use it, then you can, finish that piece and then possibly even use this other piece to make a second. The only suggestion that I would make is if you are over 18, take a lighter and just burn the end of the paracord slightly. You don't need to light it on fire or anything. In fact, you don't even need to touch the flame to this piece because it is nylon, so it will melt pretty quickly. Or if you are afraid of fire, then you can take a piece of glue or even a hot glue gun and just put a dab on the end there, just something to hold it because the paracord will fray and it does fray pretty badly. Just something that you can place there to hold the piece together. So this is in progress. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by showing you how to start the piece, and I'm going to move on to show you how to start your second color. So as you can see here, you've got the white as the primary and the blue as the secondary. In the center of the piece, I switched over and made the blue primary and the white secondary. So I'll show you how to do that. I'll also do other things like show you how to, once you get to the end of your string, how to start up a new string, and as well as how to tack down the piece as well. So like, as you can see, I like to fiddle with mine and I like to play with it. And I'm one of those people that has a couple fidget cubes, so I like things with texture. And so with those, I'll always be fiddling with my pieces. And you want to tack down the colors so that it doesn't become unraveled. And I know we only have about an hour, so we're going to try. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible, while at the same time being as I guess detailed as possible as well. So first thing that we're going to do is you have your string here. Now you should have about 3 or 4 arms lengths, 3 or 4 meters of your thread. For this first piece here, you really only require about 2 arms lengths, a meter, okay? Or else your wingspan, if you would like to call it that. I like to call it that. And it's only going to be 1 string that you're working with. It's not going to be a double string, okay? So we're going to start off by threading the needle. And the way that I thread my needle is I always pinch the thread between my pointer and my thumb here. And let's see if I can get as close as possible. It's a little hard because I used switched over to white. But if you can see the white thread between my fingers, what I'll do is I'll press my fingers together. And of course, it'll be a lot easier for you to see with your own thread. And then what I basically do is I guide the thread through the eye of my needle. So I press the thread between my fingers. I guide my eye over the thread. And then as I'm pushing the thread up, I'm also kind of expanding my fingers. That way it kind of helps to push the thread through the eye. Could take a couple of tries if this is your first time beading. That's fine. And then so what I actually do is I leave a bit of a tail Yeah, about that measurement here. Okay. And as you can see, I have my one tail on this side and then my secondary longer tail on this other side. So it's not a double stitch. If you so choose that you like the double string stitch, then by all means, go ahead. You can make a knot into both threads, but I like to do just the one. Then on this side here, you're going to make a knot. As you can see, I've already made mine. So just to show, I'm going to snip that off and do it over again. There's a couple ways that you can make your knot. You can just take it like, kind of like you would take a rope. Just go under and create your knot like that. You will need about 3 or 4 knots all in the same place. However, one of the things that I like to do is make a loop at the end. And then take that loop, place it under a second loop, go through. And one of the things that's very important when you're beading is to do things very slowly. So be patient with your work, be patient with yourself. Yes, it can be frustrating at times, but if you're patient and continue to practice, you will eventually learn things very much secondhand. So I have my knot here, and I make a second knot as well. Stop there. Okay. So I've got my second knot. The point of this knot is to make the knot bigger than the eye of the needle so it doesn't go through, and big enough so that when you pierce the paracord, the knot itself will not go directly through the paracord. Okay. So now what you're going to do is create a mark. So the mark will be the tail end of your piece, and the tail will go underneath your faux leather, which is here. So as you can kind of see here, this is the tail. That's going to be placed underneath your faux leather, just above your keychain, okay? So really here, you can make it as messy as you like, you know, that's why I like this kind of piece. So it can be nice and messy, at least for your first time, and you could practice. For this mark, how I measure it is I just take my finger, my index and my thumb. I press it at the very end of the paracord. And then I take a pen or a pencil, something, and make a quick mark there. As you can see, I've already done. So I make a mark there, and this area goes underneath the faux leather, as I've stated before. I'm going to repeat a lot, and it is a lot of repetition with beadwork. You're going to find that for example, when you start a new color, it's the exact same step as continuing a color, tacking down the piece is almost the exact same step as starting off the piece, and starting a new piece of thread is going to be the same as when we start our new piece here. So we're going to start. Okay, so what you have here is your marking. And what I do is I start towards the tail end of the piece, and I create like a diagonal, almost an X shape with my needle going upwards on one side of the paracord, and you'll find that Going through paracord is relatively easy. It's not like leather. It's not like a strong material. So it is pretty easy to go through the paracord. So you want to have that X shape in which you're starting off from underneath the marking that you've made and ending up on the top end of that marking. Once you get to that point, you pull through and you have your knot on the underside. And that knot is going to be hidden by the faux leather. All right, so once we got to this point, then we're going to start stringing the beads. So I've got my colors here. Move these aside. I've got my two colors here. I've got pink and turquoise. Now these two colors are actually size 10 beads. You can get size 11s, which I actually do have some here. Size 11s are quite just a little bit smaller, but I find that when you're starting out, size 10s are best because they are good. Like you can see them, they're kind of a little bigger. Whereas the size 11s, I find when you're really starting to get more into beadwork and detail, to use the size 11s. So you have your little canister, whether that be Tupperware or a foam plate, whatever you decide to use. You have your little canister. These ones I got at the dollar store. They are pill bottles for the days of the weeks. And I kind of got them in the health area. And they were $1, so they're relatively easy to use and carry around. Okay, so once you get to this point, you can take your beads, and what you do is, or what I like to do is I like to tilt my beads a little bit and then just kind of have a scooping motion. Now, sometimes a lot will go on, sometimes only one, sometimes none will go on. And as you can see, my beads kind of spill. Spillage happens all the time. I'm a very clumsy person, so sometimes I'm swinging my arms around and the beads will just go away. That's what happened yesterday in our class. So if you're a numbers person, your paracord is a lot thicker than mine. So I have guesstimated about 50 beads to get to 4 rows, which you're going to need. So 4 rows of beads, okay? And what you can do, but other than that, usually, because I have these longer needles as well, and what I also like to do is just fill them up until I kind of eyeball them at a place where I kind of like what they look like. So as you can see, the scooping motion isn't as fast to pick up beads this time. So I kind of eyeball the amount of beads that I'm going to need. And for myself, because mine is so thin, I'm going to wrap it around 6 times, but I suggest when you're starting off just to have the 2 or the 4 wraps. Once we've gotten to this point here, and you have your beads strung on your thread, then what you're going to do is wrap it. It really doesn't matter if you want to wrap it over or if you want to wrap it under. That one is all up to you, how you decide and how you feel is the best way to wrap it. So I'll go either way, depending on how I'm kind of feeling for the day. So I'll wrap straight across, or you can wrap up in a diagonal. Once again, like I said, there's really no such thing as the perfect way to bead. So then I will slowly follow how the rest of my beads are laid down. So I've gotten to 4 here, And at this point, if you get to this point and you let go of the beads, that's fine. It's all about just rewrapping the beads. And that's one of the reasons why I'm saying only have 4. So 4 rows. You don't want to do something like 8 rows and then having to keep on wrapping. That can be pretty frustrating. Okay. Okay, so wrap. That's all it is. Just wrapping beads around the piece. And keep an eye on the amount that you have wrapped. Very good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, until you get to this point. So there will be 1 row always kind of sticking out. Looks a little bit like a jigsaw piece. Okay. And so with this jigsaw piece, that's going to be your beginning and your ending of your new colors. So as you can see, the jigsaw piece kind of goes around. You want to keep it on one side, and that's going to be, you know, the underside of the keychain, whereas the other side will look a lot more smooth. So always keep an eye on where your first bead starts out. That's where you want the rest of your beads to end up, at least the last bead in your color. So this is one solid color. You don't have to worry about adding more color, at least not until you're comfortable with this stitch. Once you've gotten to this point, this will always be 1 more row than your other side. So you have 1, or for myself, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows on one side. And on this one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And this is where we're going to do our first tack down. Okay, so for the tack down, it's the most complicated stitch that you'll come across in this piece, just because it is hard to explain, not because the stitches itself are very complicated. It's really easy once you start, once you do it a couple of times, but I usually have to explain it a couple of times to people to understand kind of what's going on. Okay, so once you've got into your 4 rows, and the back here, it'll look like 5 rows. So you always want to have that extra row. That means that the top piece, the top of the piece, will look like it has 4 rows. Okay. So you get to this point, and I like to take my thread, hold my paracord, as you can see, between my thumb and my pointer, kind of wrap my thread down, and then have my middle finger hold that thread. Okay. So once you get to this point, what you're going to do, and I'm going to try have it as close to the camera as possible. Oh, actually, we figured out a better way to do this earlier that I always forget about. What I'm going to do, you don't have to do this step, but just to make it easier to see, I'm going to create or have another color here. So you're going to pretend that this is your last bead. So this blue bead is my last bead that I've laid down. What you're going to do here is pierce with your needle, pierce the paracord right beside the seed bead, the last seed bead that you laid down. You pierce it and you want the needle to go all the way through. If it goes through between the rows, that's fine. Okay, but if it goes up, that's fine as well, as long as it's kind of in this general area between or around the other side of your cord. So once again, right where your last bead is laid down, you take your needle and pierce directly beside it. Push the needle all the way through. Be very careful. Needles are very sharp, and since they're not used, they can hurt. So once you get to that point, you pull your thread through. Now pull it very slowly, especially if you're working with the longer cord. You don't want this loop to end up on the other side of the paracord. It creates a little bit of a knot. So you want to go as slowly as possible, really guide your loop and pull that all the way through. So it should look like that with your with your thread coming through the other side of the paracord. Oh, once again, yours is very thick and mine is thin. So it won't look exactly the same, but it'll look close enough. One of the ways that I tighten my rows once I get to this point, if they're a little bit loose, is I will pull this thread. I'll pull it kind of tight, pull it against the paracord, and then I'll just squeeze these beads with my other hand. And it'll help to tighten up those beads. It's not the most, it's not completely urgent that they're extremely tight or anything like that. It's just my own personal preference. And you have to remember as well, these beads that I'm using on this piece and on this piece are both size, these ones are size 10s, these ones are size 11s. So these ones look a little bit bigger, they look a little bit looser, but they're just as tight as the ones on these ones. It's just that this piece is with size 11s. Okay, once you've gotten to that part, what I do is I pull the thread down and see where the thread lays between the beads here. I'm most interested in this top row because what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take my needle and thread my needle and thread back through to this first bead. So I pull down my thread, I see which seed bead it lays between, then I pierce those seed beads through the center, and I go back through those beads. And I go all the way to the first bead that I laid down, or the last bead. Last bead that I laid down. So the thread will come out of the last bead I laid down. And at this point, it doesn't matter about me holding these beads because they're tacked down, they're not going anywhere. So I'm going to go over that step one more time. Okay, so what I do here is right beside this first bead or this last bead. Okay, get a little bit more focus. There you go. Right beside this last bead that I laid down, I pierce the paracord and go all the way through to the other side. Once I've pierced the paracord and gone all the way through, then I slowly pull the thread. And if your thread is really long and you're kind of seeing the needle in the way, I just put my needle aside and focus on pulling the thread through. Then, once I've gotten to this point, I lay down the thread along the beads and see which seed beads the thread has decided to lay through. And those seed beads are the ones I'm going to go through. And I always make sure that you're going the right way. You don't want to go the other way. Make sure that you're going towards the last seed bead that you laid down. Oh, go through like that there. Always pull your thread slowly. I pulled mine a little too tight and it created a little knot at the end of that seed bead. I have to undo it a little bit. It's not a big knot. Then mine, as you can see, I only have about, 4 beads to go through. So now we're going to start a new color. Now the new color, you're only going to want 2 rows. So it's going to be very short. If you're a numbers person, I say about 25, about half the amount that you had for your first color. So you have your second color here. Like I said before, what I do is I tilt my canister and just kind of have a scooping motion and wait till my needle is filled up. I'll usually fill up my needle a couple of times depending on what piece I'm working with. And I'll always check. So if I feel like there's a lot on there, just quickly check. Wrap 1. And that's actually perfect. And 2. If I have more than I need, so there's about 3 beads here that I have more than I need, what I'll do, take my needle. I see this string that's coming out of the seed beads. I'll just take my needle and go through those beads that I don't need. Then I just grab onto them and pull them all the way off. So I'm going to end or tack down this color. So just like you did with your last color, it's the exact same thing. The very last bead that you have here, if anything else is in the view, it doesn't want to. There you go. Or you have your last color here, just at the very end, right beside the last bead that you created, you pierce the paracord, go all the way through with your needle, pull your thread slowly through. As you can see, once again, I put my needle down so that I can focus on pulling my thread through. I'll always kind of pull it a little bit harder. As you can see, there's a gap. And this one also has lots of gaps in it. So gaps happen. It's just a way of life. So what I'll do, if I catch a gap early enough, I'll just pull my thread and pinch, pull and pinch. that. Then same steps, pull my thread down, see where the thread lays between the seed beads. Make sure that I'm going in the right direction towards the end of the piece. And go through those beads. Follow the yellow brick road to the end of the piece. And be very careful, very slow when you're pulling the thread through. This nylon thread can get very tangled easily. If you are a type of person who would like to continue on with beadwork, then I suggest getting some beeswax. And if you live in Lethbridge, you can get them at the craft store. And what you do with beeswax is you just drag the thread along the beeswax, and it creates a little film over the thread that helps it to not tangle as much. So that's your second color. After that, it's repetition. So all you're doing is you're stringing your beads, you're wrapping them, you're pinning them down. Take your second color, string the beads, wrap it, and then pin it down. Now, if you get to a point, or if you get to the point of the end of your string, I'll show you how to finish the string. Okay, so you want a long piece of string. So this, where it starts right here, where it ends right here, you want at least that amount. So that's about a hand and a half worth of thread left. And I'm just going to snip mine and show how to start or to end one string and start another. Okay. So you get to the end of your string, and basically what you're going to do, and it doesn't matter if you decide to end your string in the middle of your primary color, or if you get here to the end of one of your secondary colors, either or is fine. Now these first couple steps are exactly like pinning down your colors. You find the very last bead here. Once you get to that bead, you pierce directly beside the bead through the paracord. Okay, pull your thread through. You find where your thread is going to lay between seed beads. Then you're going to go back through those beads to the last bead that you laid down. Like I said, it is a lot of repetition. This is also how you end the piece. So once you get to the very end and you're like, okay, well, what do I do now? This is how you end the beadwork. Now it's good to do it about 2 or 3 times. Once you get to this point, then just, and I'm hoping it can be seen a little bit easier on camera. Okay, once you get to this point, you'll see that between the paracord and your seed bead, there is the thread. You want to take your needle, go under that thread, and come out the other side. So it'll look like this. And some people like to kind of push your seed bead back to focus. Okay. Go under the thread. And my needle is kind of bent just from usage. Yours will be a little bit straighter. Go under that thread. And you pull the thread through. There'll be a little loop. A little hard to see on the white on camera. There'll be a little bit of a loop there. Place your needle through the loop and create a knot. So just like when you start the piece, when you're ending a string, you want to create about 2 knots. So I'll go under the thread once again, pull my thread through, find the little loop, put my needle through that, and pull through. Okay, so once I've gotten to that point, then a 3rd time or a 4th time, whatever, I'll pierce the paracord. Oh, there's these beads on the other side. I'll pierce the paracord right beside the seed bead to the other side and have it come like that. If you want to have it go between the rows, that's fine as well. And then I just give it a little snip with my scissors. And that's how you end the thread. Okay, so then you want to grab your new thread that you're going to use. Okay, so then you're going to do this. You're going to follow the first steps is when you started the piece. You're going to thread your needle. Take one tail end and create a knot. And then create one more knot. I think 2 knots is better when you're starting off a new piece of string because it hides better in the paracord. That's the great thing. That's why you always want to use the same color because it will remain kind of hidden amongst the piece. So as you can see here, I had a couple of pieces that I had to restart. And so for example, there's this one right here, which I had to restart. I did not cut it, so I'll cut it down. And then there was another piece that I started over here, and then another one over here, and you can't see it. So the white works really well. Okay, so to start a new piece on the paracord, once you've ended your last piece, there's a little gap right there. So what you do is you choose a place in the piece that you feel this knot will be easily hidden. Snip it beforehand, don't snip it after. You don't want to accidentally snip one of your rows. Okay. So I will go in, I usually like to go almost right where I ended because it's the exact same motion of starting a new color, ending a color. So I choose an area beside the last bead that I laid down. I'll go right here and I'll go through to the other side. I like to go underneath the last row. Okay. And I'll pull my thread. As you can see, you can't see it, and it'll go lost even more in the work once I finish. Then, just like when you're ending your color, I go up this time. See where my thread falls between seed beads? My goal, once again, is to get to the end here. So then I will thread my needle through the beads. And depending on the amount of times you've already threaded it, it might be a little bit harder to get through. So always be wary of that. Always be wary when you're using certain beads, how large the center of the beads are. You don't want to get something too small and then be in the middle of your work and it won't go through, because a lot of these beads are glass, they will break. So I get to this point and see, this is what I mean, because I've gone through it already a few times. So I always get these little pliers to help me pull my needle through. Okay. Once I've gotten to this point, I can just keep on stringing. Okay. So that's how you end a piece and how you start a piece and how you tack down the color and the beads. I like to tack down between colors just because it's easier for me to remember, rather than some people like to tack down every 4, some people like to tack down 6. Going up to 8 is a little dangerous just because you don't want your beads to be loose. But 4 and 6 are good numbers. But for myself, I just lose track of the beads. So after this, you'll keep going, you'll keep beading. And then you get to the center of your piece. So the way to figure out where the center of your piece is relatively simple. You pinch the ends of your tails and lay them down directly beside each other. Take a little marker, and I usually made a mark just where this pink and this green piece are. And when you're switching colors, it is the exact same motion as everything else. The difference is that here, once you've placed down your secondary color, you're going to place down 2 rows of the primary color on this side. So as you can see, there's 2 rows of pink and then 2 rows of green. After I laid down to 2 rows of green, I moved on to 6 rows of pink. And then once you finish the work, it'll look like this. Now, I know things can be complicated, and sometimes you feel like, oh, I don't think I can do that right now. This is my first piece. That is perfectly fine. If you don't want to switch the colors, if you just want to have the one primary color with the one secondary color, that's perfectly fine as well. I always suggest practicing. Practice makes perfect, you know. But, you know, nothing's really ever perfect in beadwork. Amongst the Blackfoot, older indigenous women were known for wrecking their work if they were found to be what they considered perfect. And we usually add what's called a signature bead. So a signature bead, if you look in older beadworks, is a discolored bead that is different from the entire work. And so the purpose of the signature bead was, if somebody claimed that your work was theirs, you can say, okay, well, where's the signature bead? And if they can't find it, you know, right away, you can say, the signature bead is right there, point it out. And that's kind of the signature of how you're able to distinguish beaders. So it's really interesting how that came about. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to end the piece here. I'll try to go through this as quickly and simply as possible. So once you get to the end of your beadwork and you have your two tails right here, these pieces are going to represent your tails. Now I've got a glue gun that I'm going to use. What you have is your ring, you have your faux leather. Now you have a very long piece of faux leather. I would suggest cutting it in half. And that's to give you a little bit of extra in case you mess up the first piece. You've got that extra piece that you can use. Make sure that it's cut down enough so that your ring will fit through it, like that there. When your ring fits through it, then you're going to place it in half, like that. And I like to pinch a little bit. You don't have to. I like to pinch a little bit just to kind of keep the ring at the bottom here when I'm gluing it down. So once you get to the bottom of the piece here, then you will take your tails and measure where you want them in your piece. But you always want enough room so that your ring here has enough room to kind of twist. Because that's where, of course, your keys are going to go. Now I've pre-marked where I'm going to place my glue. Just move this over just a dash. Best. Move all this. Okay. So I have my glue gun here. And I've got my tails. Okay, so I'm going to have a little squirt of my glue gun. Place my tails down gently, careful with your fingers, you don't want to burn them. And then on the other side here, or you could place it on top. Another squirt of your glue. You're working with your glue gun or super glue. Be careful of your fingers. So right there is how I end the piece. You have your paracord secure in the piece, and just give your key ring a little tug, a little bit of a kind of twirl it a little bit. Make sure that it's not stuck in the glue. There's a couple extra hairs on the side here from the glue gun, and pull those out. Okay. Now I did this specifically so that I could actually pull off. So this is kind of what your tails will look like in the piece. They'll be held securely. Don't put the tape on. I did this just to show this part. But this is what your tails will look like. And you can see the ring is not attached to the tails. It's not attached to the glue. And then that'll hide things like your knot that you first had in your piece. You can do what I did here and just kind of have it slightly overlap the original rows. So the first row, or even the jigsaw piece, the first bead that I laid down, if you want to do that, just to kind of hide those last little imperfections, I like to do that as well. And then in the end, you of course will have this nice piece here. Now, if you want, as a last step, you can stitch around the piece, but the glue will hold. And because this is nylon, it responds really well to heat. So if you have something like a glue gun, it'll actually fuse to the glue in the glue gun. So you don't have to worry about it coming apart. Okay,